Leadership Preparation Webinar Series, Let's Land That Job, Part 2. The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement is comprised of an executive director reporting to the assistant state superintendent, coordinators for school improvement, academic improvement, and leadership development, as well as leadership specialists. Our office has three main goals: fostering the growth of effective leaders, ensuring valid and reliable evaluations, and raising the quality of education. We provide targeted professional learning experiences and resources to equip current and future leaders with the skills and knowledge required for successful school and district leadership. We oversee the development and implementation of Maryland's teacher and principal evaluation system. Training, guidance, and support is provided to local school systems in the implementation of fair and valid evaluations. Lastly, we provide customized professional learning experiences and support informed by data and grounded in effective practices to improve school performance. To earn continuing professional development credit, in order to receive 1 credit, you must view 5 webinars, including Part 1 and Part 2. Additionally, you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to receive 2 CPD credits, you must watch all the webinars in the series, including Part 1 and Part 2. Then you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include any pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to submit your materials, please complete the Google form found in the description below the video. For this webinar, we partnered with Glenn Max McGee, President of Hazard Young Attia and Associates.
Well, today's expectations and resources are laid out thanks to the Maryland State Department of Education. We do want you to complete this session in one sitting. It'll be about half an hour. You can always email me or even text me with questions, comments, and then you will have to produce a response to a couple sample scenarios we'll have at the end. Yeah, this will be very interactive, and I think you'll enjoy it. There are some resource materials, 7 pages of possible interview questions in Mike's Biz Principles page, and the participants guide. So that's how we'll spend our next half hour. So let's get to it. So here are the outcomes for the session. Now, after participating in this webinar, you will be able to successfully interview for a principal's position. You'll be able to demonstrate effective video interview techniques. You'll have the ability to answer standard interview questions, and we'll go through 3 standard ones. You'll even have some sample answers. Fourth, you'll be able to demonstrate effective nonverbal interview techniques. Very important. And finally, you'll acquire the confidence to excel in your next interview so you will land that job. Here's our agenda today, and you can read through this yourself. And we're going to start with a little video in a moment that should be some fun. If you remember, at our last meeting, we talked about what superintendents are seeking in an aspiring principal. Well, this is an ad, which actually should say men and women wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, but honor and recognition in case of success. Yes, that does sound like someone who's looking for a new principal, but that was actually looking for intrepid explorers to the South Pole with Ernest Shackleton's expedition. So yes, there was certainly honor and recognition, but plenty of danger and hazards along the way, as there are in the principal's job as well. Well, we know that superintendents are looking for principals with a whole array of professional and personal characteristics and qualifications, but most importantly, they're looking for what you can bring to the job, what you can contribute to them. And so let's look at a sample interview and see how this would stack up. It's not necessarily for an education job, but I think it may give you a good idea. So let's take a look and listen for part of this. Well, I hope you got a kick out of that. And let's get back to our main screen here. And that is not the kind of interview that will get you the job. And as fun as that is, I do think it makes a salient point. And that's you better be prepared for what you can contribute to the district. So let's look at those 7 points that you can do in interviews that will get you the job. And I didn't have an 8th point, which is being an early riser, but I think that's a given. So first of all, you really need to do your homework. When you go in for the interview, you need to peruse those websites. And that means read them thoroughly, deeply, a few times. Do a Google search, not just page one all, but do the Google News search, the Google Images search. See what's important to them. If they have a Facebook page, go on and look. You'll find all kinds of great information. If they have a Twitter account, start following it. You need to learn the mission, the vision, and the values of the district. Jot down their strategic plan, goal or goals. Familiarize yourselves with the strengths of the district, but the challenges they're facing. Because what that will tell the interview is that this job matters to you, matters so much that you've invested your time in interviewing for this job so you can give them the very best. And that's what this interview mindset needs to be about, what you can do for the interviewer, what you can do for the school, what you can do for the district. Second, make a list on a piece of paper or in a little journal. I always like to bring little journals to interviews of the points that you want to make that demonstrate how you can and will contribute to the district and to the community. And it's important to have those written down. Otherwise, you'll forget them because you're going to be nervous. That's a given. So that when you have something written down, you have a journal or a piece of paper right near you that you can refer to. That's important. And one thing that I learned anyway in media school, and they teach in every media school, is how to make your points when you're asked a question. And so you want to make sure when you write down those points that you'll be able to get to them during the interview. Number 3, listen and think before answering questions, and answer all parts to a question with multiple points. There's nothing that says you have to jump to an answer immediately. In fact, when I'm interviewing people, and we are in our firm, that shows us, first of all, that the person may not be the best listener, may not have time to think deeply and thoughtfully about an important answer. We much prefer a few seconds of silence or somebody making a couple notes on a piece of paper or in a little journal, and then coming up with the answers. I'll give you a great example. This has to do with the superintendent's position, but we recently interviewed about a dozen candidates for a superintendent's job, and we asked them what they would do to reconnect the district office and the district office leadership team with the schools, because there was this big separation between the district and the schools. Of those 12 people we interviewed, only 3 actually answered the full question. Almost all of them talked about what they would do to connect with the schools as the next superintendent, how they would go around, how they would make connections, but did not answer the full question and did not really attend to what was actually most important to us, was how as a leader you get those working with you to connect to the schools. So you want to listen and think before answering the question. And interviewers are adept at asking questions with multiple parts. And if you forget one of those parts, it's okay to say, can you go back and repeat that second question, the second part of that? So make sure you answer all the parts to every question. Number 4, you want to anticipate questions. You want to prepare talking points and practice, practice, practice. It's just like preparing for a game, preparing for an audition, preparing for a recital. The more you practice, the better you'll get. And so practice with a friend, practice looking in the mirror, practice with your spouse who, like mine, may have no problem telling you how you can get a little better. But you want to anticipate questions. And again, we have several we'll get to a little later, standard questions. And Michael Smith's principal page has 7 single-space pages of questions. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to look through questions and practice. 5th, you want to share stories that reflect who you are and what you value. And I cannot emphasize enough how important those stories are. We talked in the first session about narrative and number. You know, I'm not as interested in how you improve test scores by 5 percentage points in 3rd grade reading as I am hearing how you impacted a 3rd grader's family or a small group of third graders who had been marginalized. Share those stories that talk about who you are, what you value, what really matters deeply to you, and again, what you contribute to the district. Ideally, because you've done your homework, those stories that you share will be a perfect match with the challenges that they have. Your opening and closing are critically important, so make these count. In every interview, you will be asked, take a few minutes to tell us a little about yourself. At Hazard Young Atia, our opening question is, take a few moments to share your story. Have that down. Know what you're going to say, make it meaningful, and make it concise. You really shouldn't go more than 3 or 4 minutes. You want to give enough professional and personal detail to let them know that you are an authentic, caring, energetic human being who really wants to contribute to the district. You don't want to repeat your whole resume over 10 minutes. And we have that happen. We have interviewed principal candidates, we've interviewed superintendents who literally take 15 to 20 minutes out of a 45-minute or an hour interview to tell their story. And they don't get a second interview. Let me put it that way. So work on practicing that opening and closing, have it down, look people in the eye, look around the room if it's a group interview, and we'll get to some of those nonverbal pieces later. But work on that opening. And now what about the closing? This gets us to number 7. Almost always interviewers close with, thank you, this has been great. Do you have any questions for us? And that is your opportunity to close. That is a golden opportunity to close. It is not the time to ask some questions because they're done with the interview. So you want to use these final 2 minutes to make a very strong closing statement, to make a compelling case why you want that job. Our advice is to say, I don't have any questions at this time. I really appreciate your time and attention. I just want to use this last couple minutes to make a few closing comments and then go on. Now, if you're really connecting with their interviews and you feel that and some people do say, well, if they ask if I have any questions, I better have a question. Here's my advice. I learned this from a principal who I hired, a guy named Bill Parker. I hired when I was superintendent in Deerfield, Illinois, District 109. And I took this same line in my next 2 interviews and got the job both times. So I asked Bill at the end of the interview, Bill, this has been a great interview. Do you have any questions for me? And he said, yep, just one. I said, what's that? He says, when can I start? And to me, that showed such energy, enthusiasm, and eagerness to do the job. And actually hired Bill, and he did a fabulous job as a middle school principal. Some helpful hints for video and phone interviews, especially in these times of COVID. You're going to do a lot more video interviews than you will in-person interviews, probably. Of course, I hope it's only one interview. I hope you just do one interview and get that job right away. But let's be realistic. Even if it's for one job, you'll probably have a first interview and maybe a second or third interview. And almost always are going to be video interviews now. I know very, very few people do phone interviews anymore. So let's talk about really what you can do. First of all, you want to prepare the same way as you would for a face-to-face interview. You're going to have notes with you by your side. You want to do all your homework. We won't repeat that. You need to be in an office or business-like setting. I actually interviewed a person for a school executive director who was at the airport with her cell phone, getting all the background noise, and then she got uncomfortable and needed to move somewhere. We've had people interview outdoors, which looks lovely, but you get the wind noise, and frankly, you get distracted. If I'm indoors and it's a beautiful day outdoors, I may not necessarily be focusing all my attention on the candidate. Interviewing in a Starbucks, your man cave, your she shed, that doesn't work. Just like now, I'm in my HYA office. I decided not to record this from home because my home office looks more like a rec room than an office. You want to get distracting items out of sight and prevent as best you can sounds that interfere. And yes, we have had interviews with barking dogs, background music, the phone ringing. I was doing a presentation from my home office. My wife was downstairs leading her summer campers. Her middle school and high school students in camp songs were filtering up. And it was a little embarrassing, but the board thought it was pretty funny. In any case, you may want to have a well-chosen picture over your shoulder And there's plenty of good examples right now that you can watch on almost any news show. I know over my left shoulder here, I have this picture of Dr. Martin Luther King that always inspires me. And even though you can't see it, it gives me some comfort to know that it's there. You want to close all applications on your device except for the one you are using, especially if you're going to be asked to screen share. And then that will prevent extraneous noises from coming in when you get messages or alerts. So all these are really helpful hints and will, again, help you land that job or certainly move you on to a second or third interview. Some other ideas we have, putting the camera at eye level, which means you probably need to put your laptop on a stand or stack of books. Personally, I use my dissertation as right underneath my computer, along with the Kinsey collection artwork and one of my favorite large volumes on the Admiral Zheng He, former Chinese admiral that had a lot to teach us about present day. And so it's stacked up at eye level. We actually have had people interviewing, looking way down, which is not anyone's most attractive feature, or looking way up. It just doesn't work. You want face to face. So, you pretend it's just like you're interviewing someone on camera, you're looking right into the camera. We want to make sure that you have front lighting and not backlighting. We actually interviewed a candidate that had, again, was his whole back was to this bright outdoor window. So we could see outdoors perfectly, but all we saw from him was a silhouette. It was like he was in a witness protection program or something. And then we strongly advise not to use Zoom backgrounds. People kind of see this as, oh, this is fun, this looks great. And they have all kinds of backgrounds or they use their own picture. But you can tell they're a picture and frankly, they're not authentic. Even if it's your own school background or a family picture or a lovely outdoor scene or even an office, we much prefer seeing people in an authentic setting. So as novel as they can be, leave those for family conversations and your interaction with your friends. But we advise being authentic as possible, and that means using your own office and your own background, which of course you can stage, but please don't use a preset background or a photograph. Again, some other helpful hints moving on. We talked about the importance of having the camera at eye level. And so this is not only good practice because you can connect with the people, but it gives you the opportunity to really use your inflections, to use your hands in a nice small way. You can talk about how you move something from here to there, and you can use head tilts, you can use facial expressions, give the opportunity to smile. And it's actually good practice to look at some online interviews. It's actually good practice just to watch news anchors when they're presenting, because you'll see very few of them look straight into the camera and talk. They're always using their eyebrows, their head nods, they're coming forward, they're back. So you're actually an actor. And again, we talk about authentic, but these really help create your point. So look into the camera, use your nonverbal cues as best you can. Especially, it's very difficult to use your hands in tight places. And so you want to probably use your head and your inflections more. If you have something to screen share, be sure to clear that with the interviewer ahead of time. When they set up the interview, you say, hey, I may have a few slides I want to screen share. I may have a chart or graph, photo, an image I'd like to screen share. Would that be okay? And if you do, you better practice it. And I will give you a helpful hint based on experience, and a rather embarrassing one at that. Oftentimes people use for interviews Google Meet because it's free. So a school board was interviewing me to provide a superintendent search job. And I was on Firefox, which is what I usually use. And when it came time to screen share, I couldn't screen share. And I wondered what was wrong with my computer. But I had had the presence of mind to say, you know what? I'm just going to switch browsers for a minute. Please be patient. And I jumped over to Google Chrome because my wife uses Google Chrome and I knew she screen shared with Google Meets on Google Chrome. So I had to use a Google Chrome. And I had the newest version of Firefox on my Mac, but I couldn't screen share in the version of Google Meet that the client was using. So you want to make sure you practice ahead of time. As much as I'd like to say we got the job, we didn't get the job. And I hope it didn't have to do with the screen sharing. So it's an important lesson. So make sure if you must screen share, you first get permission, and second, practice. Now, what about interview questions you will get? Because you're going to get some. Here are the common ones. Take a few minutes to tell a little about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Tell us why you want this job. Share a time when you made a mistake and tell us how you rectified it and what you learned from it. These are some sample questions we guarantee that you'll get. Here are a few others. What are your future career plans? What do you hope to accomplish in your first 100 days? That may be the first semester, your first year. And we already said, what questions do you have for us? Well, in your resource materials, you'll see Michael Smith's principals page interview questions, 7 single-space pages of interview questions. So go through those. They're very, very helpful. We're not going to tell you how to answer all of those, and I think your answers will be better than pretty much anything I could tell you. But we will go through a few tough questions for you at this point. So here's the first question. Tell us, why do you want this job? Well, here are some helpful hints. You want to focus on the schools and district's needs. You want to make it abundantly clear that you have done your homework and you've learned about the setting, you've learned about the school, you've learned about the environment, you've learned about the culture. And it is certainly acceptable to add a personal reason for wanting the job. It's a great place to raise a family. It's the kind of school I would want my kids to attend. It gives me the opportunity to establish roots, to become part of the community. So those are all points that you're going to want to make. And here's a sample answer. And let's see how you think it sounds. So you just asked me, Max, why do you want this job? Well, from all that I have learned about the school and the district, I believe that I am an excellent fit for the job. I certainly have the skills, the energy, the work ethic, and the enthusiasm to lead and serve, to sustain what is great, and to improve in the areas of need. I believe in the mission that you have, and I share your core values. This position is an opportunity to make a positive difference to students, to staff, and the entire school community, and I'm eager to get to work. Now, I hope you notice something about that answer. It's not just the words. It's inflections. It's pausing. Silence, in some points, that pause can be your best friend. Let it sink in. Opportunity to make a positive difference to the students, because you want them to hear it's about students. The staff, you know how important teachers and staff are to the kids. And the entire, using the hands, the entire school community. And I can't wait to get to work. So there's some good verbiage, but also some, I hope, good ideas and some good expression, some good modeling for you. Let's move on to the next question. This is really a tough one, especially if you're currently a principal and looking for another principal's job. So this is really a lateral move, or you're a principal and looking for a director's job. You may be a little bit up the ladder, but that's kind of a lateral move as well. But the point is, you're leaving one job and moving to another one. First of all, never, ever criticize your past employer. Difficult as it is, don't do it. Because what the interviewer is doing, he doesn't really want to, or she doesn't really want to hear your story and hear about your problems. Again, he or she, the interviewer, wants to hear what you will do for them. You don't want to say, Facebook is for my parents, you know. You want to be positive. You want to be upbeat. You want to show that you have researched the school district and that your talents are the right fit for addressing their goals and needs. So focus on that, not on why you're leaving your past job. This one poor guy I know keeps trying to get jobs. Every time I talk to him, he's telling me 15, 20 minutes about his past job, but now is a year in the past. I've heard the story. I don't want to hear it again. Nobody wants to hear it. I want to hear what you can contribute. All right. How would you answer that? Well, here's a sample. So why are you leaving your current job for this one? Well, I'm leaving my current position proud of what I was able to accomplish, working with great people. And I have such fond memories of the relationships with the students, with the staff, and the whole community. However, this is the right time to seek a new school to lead and to serve, because this position is an exciting opportunity to make a positive difference to students. It's the opportunity to contribute to making your vision a reality and achieving your goals. And I am especially committed to tackling the achievement gap and engaging with the parents of your district. From what I've read and seen, these are critically important to you, and I am the right fit for that job. And really, I can't wait to get started. So I had to add a little there at the end because I ran out of room on the slide. But again, I think you get the idea. It's both about verbiage that's positive, that's forward looking. Didn't even mention why I left the job, which was frankly, I really couldn't work with 3 of the 5 board members. And I was very proud of what I was able to accomplish. So, that's the way we do it. Oh, here's another tough question. What is your biggest weakness? Here you want to be honest. Vulnerability is a means of building trust. So being vulnerable is a way to build trust, to make this human connection. Do not say that your biggest weakness is really a strength. I think, 1 out of every 3 people I interview say, well, my biggest weakness is that I work too hard or something, but it's really a strength of mine. And then don't give a weakness as a red flag. You don't want to say, I am a workaholic. That term especially is a red flag because of the aholic part and because it shows that you are not able to achieve your own work-life balance. You don't want to say, I am not a good delegator, because good leaders are good delegators. So really think authentically about an area that you can improve and be honest about it. Well, it's easier said than done. So let's look at a sample answer. What is your biggest weakness? It's not always easy for me to say no to people. While I can and have and certainly do make tough decisions, when teachers or parents come to me and want something, my first thought is, how can I give them what they need? When sometimes it would be better for them and for me to deny the request with a sound rationale for doing so. So just to summarize, my biggest weakness is it's not always easy for me to say no to people, but I can do it when I need to. So that was a tough answer. That is really my biggest weakness. And this was the toughest question for me to answer. And it may be yours as well. So it's one you want to write down, think about ahead of time, write down some notes, and practice, practice, practice. Next question. How do you explain a gap in employment? You have taken a year off for some reason. These are hard ones because it'll be on your resume. Remember last session we talked about writing resumes that get you an interview. Now we're talking about conducting the interview that gets you the job. And so for these gaps, we know you were honest about your resume. Prepare for this one. Again, have an honest, concise, that means short and clear answer. There are always good reasons for a gap in employment. Advancing your education, dealing with family issues, or matters of personal principle. You want to indicate that you left your last school or district in great shape and share what you did during that gap to improve your personal knowledge and skills that have now made you the perfect fit for this new position. Well, let's take a crack at answering this one. So, yeah, I saw you have a 1-year gap in employment. How do you explain that? And I'm going to answer this as I'm looking for a principal's job. A new superintendent was hired who established new goals and a direction that were not aligned with the culture of our school. And so I left amicably. We were separated in a very mutual, friendly way. And I left very proud of what our team had done for students and families. Well, this turned out to be a great opportunity because when I left my former school, I really now had a year. And during this year, I was able to do some writing, kind of writing that I always wanted to do and never had time to do it. I was able to write and publish an article in a magazine. I actually have a copy here. In addition, I was able really to care for my ailing parent and really help my wife out as she was working hard at her new job, and I was able to help out with some childcare as well. So this year off really turned out to be a gift. I have the article done. Our family situation is stabilized, and now I am ready to get to work in your district and for your school, your students, your staff, and your families. So again, I elaborated a little on this answer to give you some more authentic flavor of how it would sound. So all these are good reasons and valuable reasons. Again, you don't want to take too much time on this question. You want to always end it with talking about what you did and then, looking forward to moving on to help out with the next school or next district. Now it's your turn. And so we have 3 sample scenario questions here, and we'll go through these. Part of your assignment now, following up on these, will be to prepare responses to these. So let's take a few moments and let's look at these 3 scenario questions. They're all real world questions, and I've actually had to publish responses to these in a journal. And so the first is about the art teacher. The high school art teacher doesn't give any grade above a 96 in her studio art elective because she believes there's always opportunities for improvement. A senior consistently high on the honor roll believes a 96 she earned fails to reflect her hard work and accomplishments in this course, thus leaving her with a lower grade than she believes she deserves. After she and her parents complained to the teacher, who refused to change the grade, they come to you with a complaint and threaten to go public with their issue. What do you do? So if you're looking for a high school or middle school job, we would like you to write a response to that answer. Now, in the interest of time, there's a scenario for middle school, a sample scenario for elementary school as well. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read all of these, but I'll just summarize real quickly. The middle school one is about issues with serious disciplinary matters related to middle school, cutting classes, cyberbullying and harassment, vaping and cannabis use. All these are real world middle school scenarios, and you're going to have to figure out what to do about them. The elementary piece is really about a conflict between a teacher and a parent and how you would mediate and resolve that conflict. So again, you'll have to write responses to 2 of the 3. Take time to read them, think through your responses, and of course, I'll be very interested in how you do respond, as will the folks from the Maryland State Department of Education. What I want to do today, though, is to close this out, talk about nonverbal communication, because as you're writing your responses, you won't have the opportunity to use that. I hope you've seen plenty of examples of quality nonverbal communication as we've gone through this webinar today. So let's first of all just talk about some of the facial pieces. Smiling. You want to be happy. Smiles are contagious. So you want to always look happy. You want to smile. You don't need to be cheesy and fake it, but just kind of be yourself. Be pleasant. Breathing is really important. Take time to breathe and think. We talked for a little bit ago about how silence matters. That silence, the pause, gives the opportunity to breathe. Even in Camus' Myth of Sisyphus was rolling that rock up the hill, and he is doomed to do that for eternity. Camus' essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, he talks about after he reaches the top of the hill, the rock rolls back down, how Sisyphus just has a moment to breathe and to look out over the horizon. And maybe in that moment, he has time to reflect before he resumes his task of rolling that boulder uphill. Take time to breathe. Exude energy and positivity. These are very important, and you can do this non-verbally, just through your look, through your expression, as well as, of course, through your voice. You want to exhibit a calm confidence. And of course, this is done by the next column using eye contact, looking straight ahead. It's always okay to make a note and to look up. But again, people appreciate self-confidence, they appreciate calm. Dress like you have the job. Again, even if it's an interview, you want a coat and tie for a job and professional dress for a woman. I must confess, I actually have on my blue jeans and ASICS running shoes below, but I have my suit coat and I'm all business on top. You really want to dress like you have the job. Even if you're interviewing in a remote rural location, we've hired principals and superintendents in mountain cultures, but we expect them to come in with a coat and a tie and looking professionally, not like they're ready to hit the slopes or go out for a wilderness hike. If you're face-to-face, we do want to, come back to a couple things that are really important. That athletic posture. If you're sitting, it's really important to sit straight and upright. But as you come into a room and meet people, it's really important to, again, stand straight and tall. Use that erect posture, stick out your hand. You're going to shake hands, or maybe in COVID, give knuckles, or if social distance is maintained, just really to look, I can't think of a better word than athletic. Feet spread about shoulder distance apart, shoulders back, head up and extended. Those project confidence, and it's really, really important. The illustrations on this slide talk about hand movements, and these are really hard to show on a tight shot like we have right now, but you can see them yourself. And you always see these when politicians speak, how they use their hands to project confidence, to show that they're calm or they're thinking thoughtfully about something. They open up, trust me, believe me, and then to exhibit strength. These hand motions will tell you a lot, but you always want to keep them tight. Oftentimes we see people get really too big and too expressive with their hands. That actually distracts. Keep them nice and tight within a frame that really shouldn't go much beyond your shoulders. You can look at the trustworthy and strength. Both the elbows are close to the body, relaxed elbows are out, but the hands are in. And finally, I said this before, and I think it's probably a good place to close. Nonverbal communication, silence is on your side. That always suggests I'm thoughtful, I'm reflective, I'm thinking, and it helps calm you down a little as well. So those are our nonverbal communication helpful hints from Mother McGee. And so let me just close with saying congratulations to all of you aspiring leaders. Without a doubt, I am so confident that you will be successful, accomplished leaders who will make an enduring difference. But first thing, you got to get that job. And so I hope today that you have picked up the interview skills and the presence that will really help you land that job. And I can't wait to hear about how you succeed in your new jobs. And again, feel free to contact me via my website, email, Twitter, or text message. And I am always here for you and for the Maryland State Department of Education. I thank you, and I am going to sign off and wish you all the very, very best in every one of your endeavors.
The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement would like to thank you for participating in the Leadership Preparation virtual webinar series. We hope you found this particular webinar informative and beneficial to your work as you prepare as a leader. To access the webinar series and find additional resources, please visit the Maryland Resource Hub. The Maryland Resource Hub can be located at marylandresourcehub.com. That is MarylandResourcehub.com. We appreciate your feedback and would ask that you take a moment at this time to complete the SurveyMonkey link or use the QR code. The feedback that you provide to us will inform our work in the office as we develop additional resources to support you in the field. Again, thank you very much for your time in completing the feedback. As a reminder, the continuing professional development credits are available to you for this Leadership Preparation webinar series. To receive 1 credit, you will need to view 5 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience for the webinar. That would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar, and completing the participant's guide, as well as extension activities related to the webinar. To receive 2 CPD credits, you will watch all 10 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience per webinar. Again, it would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar and completing the participant's guide while watching, and extension activities related to the webinar. After you have completed the work, you will then submit all of the materials to the Google Form link listed. If you need to contact us with any questions for any reason at the Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement, you can contact Ed Mitzel, Executive Director, at edmund.mitzel@maryland.gov. That is EDMUND lori.mitzel@maryland.gov, or Dr. Lori Ellis, Coordinator for Leadership Development, at lori.ellis@maryland.gov. That is LORI.ELLIS@maryland.gov.